Well, words that we're turning that world upside down and continue to turn our world upside down. And I'm so glad that you are here today. I'm Wolfgang, and I work here. And it is wonderful to see you, those of you joining us online, and of course, our amazing friends in Mill Creek. It's been such a joy to get to hang out with you several of the last few weeks, and I'm looking forward to being back up there again, but excited to be with you this way today, so good to see you guys. And all you Kirkland peeps, good to see you too. Thank you for coming today. We're looking today at that beatitude that centers around this word mercy. I don't know what you think of when you hear the word mercy. As soon as I hear it, I immediately think of a game that we used to play in elementary school. Some of you know what I'm talking about? And again, just as I explain this, let me clarify something. This is before the invention of cell phones, okay? Before everyone had one of these that we didn't have tech like that in the 80s. And so we had to come up with ways to entertain ourselves. One of those was a game called Mercy. You remember this? Anybody remembering this? Okay. Very simple game, basically a showdown between two people who would interlock their fingers and they would try to push back and twist each other's hands and fingers until the other person will relent. Here's a picture of it in action. I thought about having a little mercy tournament here in the room just to give you the experience, but that would have taken too long. You can play in the car on the way home, especially since the kids will all be sugared up for Candy Palooza. But anyway, you would twist and turn and bend back until that person would yell mercy, right? And I know, I get it. It sounds barbaric to describe. It sounds brutal. This is the best we could come up with in the day, all right? We had two favorite games. It was this and Punch Bug, which meant if you saw a Volkswagen, you could assault the other person in the vehicle, all right? I'm not sure what we were thinking back then, but who says today's games are violent? I'm not sure. And I may be giving you playground flashbacks or bully flashbacks. I apologize for that, but just stick with me here for a second because I bring this up for a purpose. This game called Mercy, when you think about it, it's a great name. It's sort of a picture of what mercy is. It's having some power, some advantage, bending someone's hand back, this power that you then choose to withhold. It's knowing you could do something to someone, but you choose not to. When that somebody calls out mercy, you grant mercy. So what is mercy? Well, you hear different definitions floating around, different pictures. I want to talk about some of those today, but kind of the classic sort of churchy definition of mercy is this idea of not getting what you deserve. Very often in the Bible, this concept of mercy and this concept of grace kind of go hand in hand, kind of show up beside each other. Grace being this thing that you receive what you don't deserve, God's his favor, his blessing, his power, his presence, etc. Grace is when God gives you something you don't deserve. Mercy is when he doesn't give you what you do deserve. Like in the game of mercy, I could break your fingers and you kind of deserve it because you're playing the dumbest game ever, right? But because you ask for mercy, I'll let up. I'll let go. I remember when I was a kid, there was another kid who was impossible to beat at mercy. And it wasn't because he was so strong or anything like that. It was because he was double jointed. You ever seen that? He could bend his fingers all the way back to his hand. I know it's gross, but as a 9-year-old, so cool, right? But you could never beat him in mercy, no matter how strong you were. Not because he was stronger or had better technique, all because he could bend without breaking. And I think this is super important because I think in so many ways, that's sort of the secret to relationships, isn't it? It's being able to bend, it's being able to flex, to roll with it. It's not just a secret to some crazy elementary playground game, it's the secret to life, right? To not let yourself get so rigid, so stuck, so intertwined that you cannot let go. You won't let go. Jesus is trying to tell us something about this blessed life. He gets at this idea of bending without breaking. Because in life, you're gonna have some things that you're gonna have to just let go. You're gonna have to take some things in life to have a blessed life. You're gonna have to learn to let some things pass or to overlook some things. Think about that. To be married, to be in a friendship, to function at work, don't you need to be able to adjust and adapt and flex a bit to make relationships work? Relationships are all about being able to win at mercy, not imposing your will on somebody else, but being willing to let go. Not paying back, not asserting your rights, not demanding your way or powering up. Learning to show mercy. And so Jesus says, one of the markers of life in the kingdom of God, the true living by Jesus' definition, he says is this: blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Now, if you know, and have been with us at all in this series, you know the setting of this verse, this Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' most famous collection of teachings. And this happens kind of following along in the text fairly early in Jesus' ministry, but he's been teaching and he's been healing, and people, more and more folks have been following him, wanting to hear what he has to say, getting excited about him. Many of these Jewish folks were very much hoping for a day when a deliverer, a rescuer, a Messiah was their term, would come and finally set them free from the oppression that they were experiencing, the injustice they were being subjected to, all imposed by Rome, by the superpower of that day. And there was growing buzz that Jesus might be that guy. And so people gathered to hear his sort of platform speech. This is Jesus announcing what he's all about. And everybody hoping he's gonna say, we're gonna overthrow the Romans. We're gonna get them out of our country. We're gonna solve our problems so we can get back to being the people of God he wants us to be. But he doesn't say that. They're hoping he'll say, we're gonna be strong, we're gonna resist, we're gonna fight back. We're gonna get what we want. But Jesus doesn't say that. In fact, Jesus says something so countercultural to them, even offensive to some, that it still shocks us today. He completely redefines what the good life looks like, what the truly blessed life is. And he says it's not about being self-sufficient, it's about being poor in spirit, acknowledging your own weaknesses and frailties, trusting God to be strong for you. It's not about living a life free from pain, because there's no such thing. It's allowing ourselves to mourn, to acknowledge the hard things in our lives, not glossing over them or pretending they're no big deal, but finding true comfort in the God who is with us. It's not about using whatever power we have purely for ourselves. It's stepping back. It's exercising meekness and humility by using our strengths for the benefit of others. And it's not about chasing satisfaction from every pleasure and comfort this world might offer. Instead, it's longing or hungering or thirsting for something more. To know God, to be like Jesus. I mean, these are the opposite of what everybody thought the true good life looked like in that day, and aren't they the opposite of what everybody still thinks the true good life looks like in our day? Countercultural, particularly this fifth one. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Because let's just call it, we live in a world engaged in a massive battle of elementary school mercy, don't we? It seems like everybody has their fingers all locked up, trying to bend back the fingers of those they disagree with. Never release, I must break you, right? Ivan Drago, there you go. That one's free. They have to get their way. They have to force those who disagree with them to quit or to tap out. Vilify them, disparage them, discredit them, cancel them, whatever it takes, whichever side. Whatever, you just gotta win. And Jesus says, that's not how my people do things. In my kingdom, we live by the mercy rule. My people are learning to flex. They're learning to let go. They're to not have to get payback, to not have to power up. Why? Because Jesus knows people are going to mess with you. Life is going to frustrate you. People are going to hurt you, disappoint you, tick you off. And those are the ones you love. Let's not even talk about everybody else. And so he knows that to live a freed up life, a blessed life, you're going to need mercy. You're going to have to be able to put up with some pain or handle hurt or deal with tough stuff without having to dish it back or get even. And not just showing mercy to people who are like us, people who vote like us, people who act like us, or think like us, or believe like us, even to show mercy to those we disagree with. So let me ask you, how good are you at mercy? I don't mean the elementary playground version. How good are you flexing, withholding retaliation, not having to have the last word, not coming back at people, especially those who don't think or live or vote like you do? How good are you at showing mercy? Are you more focused on being right or doing right? Now, I think if we're honest, for a lot of us, when it comes to this whole idea of mercy, many of us struggle with the impulse, myself included, to be finger breakers. I'm not giving up till I hear a crack. You know what I'm saying? No mercy, because we got to win. And we have a hard time letting go, hard time letting people off the hook and releasing our grip. I'm talking about when we have a fight with a friend and inside we say, "You're dead to me." When we disagree online and we blow them up and then block them. When you get into a fight with your parents and you just say, "I'm done." When you don't like something at your church and you say, "I'm out of here." I recently heard somebody say, "Yeah, I don't talk to them anymore because I found out they're voting for Harris." And no kidding, the exact same week, completely different people involved, someone said to me, "Yeah, I don't really talk to them anymore. They're voting for Trump." I'm just, like, you would think that our compassion for one another would actually be able to transcend some of these distinctions, wouldn't they? Somehow. But in our culture, and pick your word here, because I want to be equally offensive to both sides, all right? We block, cancel, write off, delete, whatever you want to call it, blacklist, whatever, entire professions, entire people groups, skin colors, countries, political parties, just write them off. Can I tell you, friends, that is not the path to the blessed life. It's a path to a stressed life of judgment, division, bitterness, frustration, constant stress, because things all around you aren't working the way you think they should. Jesus says, "Blessed are the merciful," not blessed are the block happy or the cancel culture, whatever you want to call it. The merciful, for they will be shown mercy. So to see what mercy looks like, I want to look at maybe the single most famous story in all of the Bible. I was almost embarrassed to go here, but I think it's worth revisiting, particularly given our current context. Many of you know the name of it. It's the old Good Samaritan. If you've never heard of it, you'll probably recognize it once I start to tell it. And sometimes we miss this. This story is being told. Jesus is operating at a time when those folks were deeply divided politically, religiously, ethnically, all the same ways. Jesus is approached by this person who is very concerned with drawing very clear lines about who's in and who's out, who's eligible for mercy and who's not. And in this famous story found in Luke chapter 10, Jesus has this exchange. Luke 10, verse 25, it says, "On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus." It's a dangerous game, testing Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And as you'll see, Jesus often does in his ministry, rather than directly answering a question, very often Jesus responds with a question. Look at what he says. It's an interesting strategy. Verse 26, "What is written in the law?" Jesus replied. "How do you read it?" Verse 27, he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's the heart of it. It's not how many times you sit in a service like this, you're giving, you're serving, all that. That stuff's all part of it, of course. But ultimately it boils down to loving God, loving people. Jesus' response, verse 28, you have answered correctly. Way to go. Do this and you will live, Jesus says. The good life. Verse 29. But he wanted to justify himself. No one here struggles with this, but this man clearly struggles with this, wanting to justify himself. You must mean someone else, Jesus. You must mean for another time and another people. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor exactly? Can we clear that up? Just for a sec. Who's in, who's out? Who's in the love category and who's in the hate category? Help me tease out which ones I can dismiss and which ones I have to keep being nice to. Whose fingers can I keep twisting until they relent? And whose will I let go? Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, everybody listening to this story, they've walked that same road. This is a real road. In fact, when I visited a number of years ago, the path of that ancient road from Jerusalem down to Jericho is more or less the same road that kind of snakes back and forth. Over 17 miles, you lose 3,000 feet in elevation. It's a steep road. And it was notorious in that time because so many switchbacks and turns and crevices, there were a lot of places for robbers and ambushes to be arranged. And so this is not an uncommon thing. This road was literally known in ancient times as the bloody way because this happened all the time. And Jesus says this guy goes down this road, he's attacked as many had been before, left for dead, when, hey, stroke of luck, someone wanders by. Verse 31. A priest happened to be going down the same road. Catch that, going down. I'll say that in a minute. And when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. Now, one of the laws for Jewish people was when you were going to worship, going to the temple there in Jerusalem, you couldn't touch a dead body on the way. It didn't really matter what was happening. You just couldn't do it because you'd be unclean. You wouldn't be able to participate in all the responsibilities there at the temple. But did you catch which direction this guy was going? He's going down, which means he's already been to Jerusalem. Jerusalem's at the top. Jericho's at the bottom. He's already been to church. And he walks by this guy. No excuse. Doesn't help him. Basically walking by, not my problem. Chances are these guys are still around. I got to get out of here. Maybe he brought it on himself. Then Jesus says, hey, somebody else wandered by. A Levite. Those were the folks that helped with the worship experience there at the temple. When he came to the place and saw him, also passed by on the other side. This is the worship leader, all right? Picture skinny jeans and V-neck t-shirt, all right? So you got the lead pastor and the worship leader, and they walk by this half-beaten, they think possibly dead man, pass by on the other side, do nothing. Maybe thinking, yeah, you shouldn't have gone down the bloody way, man. No, everybody knows not to do that. You got to travel together. What are you doing? Choices have consequences. And then Jesus says, verse 33, but a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. Now, we could say a lot about the history of hatred between Jews and Samaritans. This resentment, this prejudice had been around, no kidding, 700 years of hatred between these groups. Deep hatred. This would be like a Black Lives Matter protester stumbling across a Ku Klux Klan member, okay? Tension goes back centuries, almost 3 times as long as the United States has even existed. But in this scene, we see this vivid picture of what mercy means. Notice what this Samaritan does. First, what does mercy look like? First, mercy sees. Mercy sees. It starts here. Mercy sees. It's not blind. Mercy does not ignore the pain of others. It says, a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was, and he saw him. I mean, the other guys had seen him too, but it's a different kind of seeing. See, mercy doesn't look the other way or ignore the pain or the challenges of others. Jesus says, my people, I want them to keep the eyes of their heart open, to see the pain and hurt around you. Not enough to pretend that we didn't see the struggles of everybody else or to make excuses, to isolate or to insulate ourselves from those who are struggling. And you think about it. This is the first act of God's mercy to us, isn't it? He saw us in our need, in our condition, in our sin. God is a God who sees, and he calls us to be a people who see, who position themselves to see the needs of our neighbors and our coworkers and the people in our community. Mercy sees. Do you see? But mercy doesn't just see. Mercy feels. It feels. A Samaritan, it says, as he traveled, came to where the man was. When he saw him, he took pity on him. I don't love that word pity, because pity feels like kind of dismissive in some sense. This word is about compassion. He felt for this guy. He felt for him. There's an empathy element to it. And sometimes we skip this step. Sometimes we might see a need and maybe even write a check to do something about it, or whatever it is. But we never stop to empathize, to join, to walk with, to feel that need. Mercy carries this idea of a person entering into someone else's world, not just trying to bounce off it quickly. It's not unfeeling, unaffected bystander. It's just kind of helping out. That's why I just believe the opposite of love and mercy is not hatred. The opposite of love and mercy is apathy. It's just to not care. It's refusing to see, refusing to feel. That's not mercy. Mercy is a picture of coming alongside, which is exactly what Jesus did for us. Paul writes in Philippians 2 that Jesus humbled himself, taking on the form of a servant and being made in human likeness, being born as a human being. He joins us in the pain of what it is to be human, to be disappointed, to be sad, to be betrayed, to be mistreated. He gets it. In Hebrews chapter 4, it says, Jesus did all this so that he could sympathize with our weaknesses. He gets it deeper than anyone else ever could. Jesus in his mercy didn't just see our need, he came close to feel our need. So he sees, it feels, but most importantly, mercy acts. It's more than just a feeling. It's more than just pity. More than, oh, that's gotta be tough, man, I feel for them. It's how can I help? Look again at what the Samaritan did, starting in verse 34. It says, he went to him, the Samaritan went to the beaten man, bandaged his wounds, putting on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii, which would be 2 days' wages, and gave them to the innkeeper as an advance. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I'll reimburse you for any extra expenses you may have. See, mercy's more than just a feeling, kind of flipping the channel on the sad stories on the TV. It acts. And sometimes we think of ourselves as merciful people, right? Because we feel bad when we see people suffering. I must be merciful. That must be so hard. But mercy does more than just feel. It seeks to do good. Mercy isn't just about feeling bad, it's about doing good. It seeks to help. That's true mercy. And loving someone, let me be clear on this, because this is where people get often excited. Loving someone, showing compassion to someone, that doesn't mean you agree with their beliefs or you approve of what they do. Doesn't mean you have to say, you know what, you're right. Everything you do, you're right. Because this Samaritan, he had to overcome the fact that this beaten guy is not like him. He doesn't believe what he believes, doesn't value what he values, doesn't live like he lives, but he shows mercy. Why? Because mercy sees the image of God in another person regardless of all that other stuff. Mercy sees. It doesn't choose to insulate or isolate itself. Mercy feels. It cares to the point of feeling for someone. But it doesn't stop there. Mercy acts. It takes steps to try to meet the need, to do something about the hurt. But before you act, know this too, mercy costs. Mercy will always cost. We can't ever be merciful without it costing. What did it cost this Samaritan? It cost him his schedule, right? I mean, this guy's got places he's headed. I'm sure he had some agenda. Whatever it is he's trying to do, had to postpone that. Mercy will never, ever serve your convenience, ever. You will never encounter a need and say, oh, I'll meet that need because it's so darn convenient for me right now, right? Why did you choose to adopt? Why did you choose to be a foster parent? Why did you choose to step in and volunteer in that ministry or this ministry? Well, because it was so convenient, said no one ever. Mercy will cost you. Cost you time, perhaps money, emotions, maybe your pride. Crossing these lines, what will people think? All put aside for the sake of mercy. And of course, Jesus finishes this story with his punchline. He's so good. Verse 36. So having heard this story, friends, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? And this previously self-righteous expert of the law replies, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, you might want to try that. Go and do likewise. That's mercy. Not just reserved for the people who are like us, because in this story, that's the point. And friends, if anybody in our world ought to be leading the way when it comes to showing mercy, it ought to be those of us who have experienced our own mercy beyond belief. Don't miss this. You understand who we are in this story, right? We're the dying guy on the side of the road. We've been beaten up, many of us. We'll just acknowledge it. Man, life beats us up. Leaves us wounded, leaves us vulnerable, leaves us exposed. And when I was vulnerable and exposed and left for dead, Jesus showed up. He came in and he offered to save. He saw and he felt and he acted at great cost to himself. And he rescues, pouring out his blood like the wine on those wounds, pouring out his spirit like the oil on those wounds, paying the price that was needed to bring healing, carrying us to safety so we could experience it, and promising to return with even more. See, ultimately, friends, this is the picture of the mercy that was demonstrated on the cross for us, isn't it? We were not in any way like Jesus, right? We didn't believe what he believed. We didn't value what he valued. We didn't live like he lived. We and the entire human race were foreigners to him. Foreigners in his ways. Yet on the cross, Jesus was willing to lay down his life out of mercy for us. The Bible says, he who knew no sin, had nothing to do with sin, had never sinned, never experienced it firsthand, never committed sin, he became sin. Why? So that we might become the righteousness of God. The mercy that Jesus poured upon us cost him his very self. As the Apostle Peter put it here in 1 Peter 2, he says, once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. You used to be divided and estranged. Now you're part of God's family. And you used to be in desperate need of this mercy, but he came and he offered that mercy to you. So if anybody in our world ought to be leading the way when it comes to showing mercy, it ought to be those of us who have experienced this mercy beyond belief. That's why in this world that is suffering from a serious mercy shortage, as followers of Jesus, we have a chance to show the kind of mercy that we ourselves have been shown. Because as hard as it is to give mercy, let's be honest, doesn't everybody want a little mercy? When you're driving along with a cell phone to your ear and you see that cop and you drop that phone fast as you possibly can, and you see that thing behind you, think, oh, mercy, oh, mercy. You see the lights come on, oh, mercy, oh, mercy. You see him pass you for the next car. Oh, hallelujah, right? I noticed that guy was pretty reckless. Good job, man. Way to get him. Hey, you won't believe what I just saw. You know, like that kind of thing, right? It's kind of the way it works. For you too, or just me? Friends, we get to be the hands and feet of Jesus, extending this mercy to other people. And as much as we who want our nation and our world to be different, friends, can I tell you what will determine that is it's less who gets elected next week or what party gets into power. It's if the people of Jesus actually decide to live lives of mercy. That will matter far more than whoever gets inaugurated in January, friends. And that's something you can control versus all that other stuff. Just friends, please, When the church shows Jesus and acts like Jesus, then change happens. That's why we're so passionate around here about things like our Together For Fund. You hear us say, talking about being a church together for our neighbors, the next generation, and those in need. In that spirit, we have this thing called the Together For Fund, where we gave away last year more than $250,000, all funded by your giving. And those aren't just dollars. Those are stories literally of dozens of families who still have a place to sleep because your giving enabled us to help get them current on their rent. That's the stuff we're about as the people of Jesus. It's people who have power and water turned on right now because we could help them through a hard time. People who couldn't afford to get their car fixed, but have had them repaired because of the generosity of people who are part of this community, Jesus people, to be able to get to work or to overcome medical bills that were crushing them. We're all about that kind of mercy as a church. And you should know, when we launched up there in Mill Creek, guys, when we expanded, we added more and more territory that we serve and support in those ways. And right now, we are serving more people than we've ever served in the 55-year history of this church. Tens of thousands of dollars because of your giving at both Mill Creek and here at Kirkland. If you give, you're part of that. But friends, it's not just being part of a church that looks for ways to show mercy. It's being people who look for ways to show mercy. What if this week you decided, I'm gonna love God by loving people? When I serve somebody, I'm serving Jesus. When I forgive someone, I'm being like Jesus. So I'm gonna pray for others before I pray for me. I'm gonna let go of a grudge that I've been holding on to this week. I'm gonna give my parents some grace this week. I'm gonna listen more than I lecture this week. When someone cuts me off in traffic, I'm gonna pray for them, not against them. I don't have to have the last word. I don't have to win every argument. I'm going to actually extend mercy to people even if they don't deserve it. Because friends, we were extended mercy and we didn't deserve it. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And so in a world of finger breakers, God's calling us to be people of mercy. What about you? And so would you just bow your head with me, and you can stay seated there, please. Both here and in Mill Creek. I want to invite you to first be reminded of the mercy he's offered us. Some here, today is the day when you need to ask him for mercy. When you say, Lord, life has me beat up, and I try to look all together on the outside, but man, I feel vulnerable and afraid, and I don't know what to do. And Jesus comes along in his beautiful compassion and tenderness. He sees you. He feels what you're struggling with. He acted and acts in your life at incredible cost to himself, all out of love for you. And so maybe today is the day you embrace that mercy. You invite it into your life. If that's you, we would love to pray with you. Love to pray with you down front after the service here and just talk with you about this new adventure he's inviting you to be part of. But friends, for those of us in this room or listening right now who have tasted this mercy, friends, no more finger breaking. Let's look for ways to spill that, let it overflow out of us into this world that is starving for mercy givers. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. So as you spend a moment, I'm gonna invite you, just listen to the lyrics of this new song. This song is a sort of offer to God. It's saying, in all of the things that I see you calling me to, God, send me. I'm not gonna hope somebody else does it. I'm not gonna take solace just in the fact that the church does it. Send me, Lord. And if you boldly pray that prayer as you're sitting there right now, can I tell you something? God will use you in ways you never dreamed. Because blessed are the merciful, they will be shown